As healthcare providers is under siege, a major cyber attack forcing hospital ERs to turn away patients in multiple states. As Miguel Almaguer reports, it's just the latest high-profile company to get hit by hackers.
Tonight, the ongoing cyber attack at Ardent Health Services is forcing roughly a dozen of their hospitals to divert patients away from emergency rooms, impacting critical care in at least 4 states. Ardent, a major national healthcare provider, has now taken its network offline after cyber criminals hijacked their operating systems.
How dangerous can a hack be at a hospital?
Very. It's life-threatening. It's
life-threatening. If our lawmakers, judges, whoever, does not stiffen up the penalty on people doing this stuff and basically going in and holding people hostage or causing this type of damage, if they do not increase the penalty on these people that's doing this stuff, they will never gain an upper hand pertaining to how real that artificial intelligence can be pertaining to what people can do today in destruction compared to what they couldn't do 25, 30 years ago. That is how far behind that our system is broken pertaining to our criminal legal law system. It's pathetic.
very. It's life-threatening. It's as simple as that. This does put people's lives at risk.
Still scrambling to restore its vital IT operations after the Thanksgiving Day hack, Ardent Health confirms a temporary disruption of operations, adding patient care continues to be delivered.
Now, this didn't happen Thanksgiving in 1993, or Thanksgiving in 2003, or Thanksgiving in 2013, but this happened in Thanksgiving 2023 here in the United States.
Effectively, though they cannot confirm the extent of any patient health or financial data that has been compromised.
Now it's sort of like I'm back on the waiting wagon, and that's not good.
In Tulsa, Annie and Eric Wolf say her long-scheduled open heart surgery has been delayed after doctors lost access to her medical records.
I am, however, furious that malicious coders and attackers, hackers, would specifically target a healthcare system and put lives in jeopardy.
With cyber criminals demanding hefty ransoms, extorting nearly $1 billion this year alone by one estimate, a growing number of local governments, universities, school districts, and healthcare providers are becoming targets.
They ought to engineer a new law called the Smacker Law under the hackers of the people resisting against this type of activity to the degree that punishment will be severe if anybody especially causes hardship of life or limb regarding this. It is absolutely out of control. And until we, the people, redial this in towards what we're having to deal with today pertaining to artificial intelligence, we're going to continue to see things like this again and again and again. And the sad thing about it is, it could be your grandmother, it could be your grandfather, it could be your mother, your sister, your brother. It could actually be you. If you was caught up in a dilemma of an accident or a heart attack or a stroke, and all of a sudden you was relying upon the medical system for your survival, and all of a sudden somebody like this done something like this.
Targets. But tonight, it's everyday Americans who are so often the victims. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
Next tonight, more than 40 people trapped for weeks by a landslide. Their amazing rescue.
Now that was bad news. Now let's reach out here for some good news real quick and
and through a narrow pipe, but they weren't getting out. Day after day, there were roadblocks. Drilling efforts failed. Even machines brought in by international experts were breaking down.
It's too much for the auger, okay? It's like our auger is it's not going to do anything more.
With just 6 feet to go,
We are near a breakthrough, but not yet there.
rescuers brought in so-called rat miners, men with tools, who cleared the final stretch by hand. The workers were then wheeled out on stretchers through a 3-foot wide pipe. After the jubilation, the workers were rushed to nearby hospitals, an incredible journey that will soon take them home. Janice Mackey-Frayer, NBC News.
That's what should have happened in 1988 when number 9 tapes circulated to the White House. It should have been a jubilation. But instead of it being a jubilation, it was a rectization towards people wanting to wreck the very will of the Heavenly Father, God Almighty, that has now led us down this endless path of doom and destruction. Really sad.
That is Nightly News for this Tuesday. Thanks for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other.
To be sick enough to receive abortion care, and she had multiple surgeries to reconstruct her uterus, 3 days in the ICU, and now her fertility is compromised.
Joining me now is Amanda Zarowski, lead plaintiff for the Texas abortion ban lawsuit. Good to see you, Amanda. The last time I saw you, there were 5 plaintiffs. Now there are 20 plus 2 doctors. That is not surprising. I think that was the expected outcome, that more women would be harmed. But I want to let you listen to one of the arguments that was made, which to me seems pretty astounding. An attempt to deny that you and your 19 co-plaintiffs have standing to bring this suit. Take a listen.
Your position is that in order to seek the kind of clarity that these plaintiffs are seeking, you have to have a woman who is pregnant, who has some health condition that she believes places her life at risk or impairment to a major bodily function, but her doctor says, I don't think it does, and she has to then sue the doctor and maybe the Attorney General at that point, and then she would have standing.
I don't know if that would be the only circumstance, but you would at least then know that the law is the problem and not the doctor refusing to perform an abortion.
Amanda, the judge seemed a bit confused by it, as am I. Your thoughts on that argument?
Everyone was confused by this, right? The claim in and of itself, the audacity to say essentially that a pregnant patient would have to be in some sort of dire situation in the middle of this situation to have standing is just absurd. In my particular situation, what that would have meant is while my amniotic...
Once more, you're talking about life and limb. I don't know what's happened to our lawmakers, much less to our law enforcement people that's supposed to be in behind the lawmakers. But obviously something has occurred, because whenever we see things going on that are unproportionately out of control, and our politicians don't stand up to the plate in either recognizing it or changing it, then we as a society are in peril. And that is that way regardless whether it's machine guns, AK-47s, ARs, whatever, pertaining to all the gun violence. Our system is broken. So who fumigates the system? The people. And if the people ain't willing to fix the system or to recreate a new system, then we are left handicapped, and we are left to bleed out and die. And that's what's happening to our American way of life. And until we, the people, decide that we're going to stand up against all this, in getting these politicians out of office that's been in there for years and years and years that obviously are not in check with reality, until we're willing to stand up and get these people out and bring people in that does recognize these challenges, then we're going to continue to suffer. It's absolutely preposterous in what is going on today that is very, very sickening.
Amniotic fluid was running down my leg. That's when I would have been able to pursue legal action. But in my case, I went septic hours later. So I would have died in court trying to fight. And that's what the state is saying I should have done. It doesn't make any sense.
And it sounds like they're saying that, as you said, if you were in that catastrophic situation, which you could die from, you'd have to take the time to first sue your doctor. And then only after that, you could sue over the law. That seems nonsensical. And it also sounds like the state of Texas is saying that women need to come near to death before they can get relief.
That's exactly what it sounds like they're saying. And it sounds...
But yet now we'll allow for all these illegal immigrants coming over here that we don't know if they're child molestators or murderers or rapists or drug dealers or whatever. I have never seen a government so dysfunctional, either on a state, county, or federal level. And our politicians right now that have come and gone pertaining to the people that actually helped to establish this great nation, pertaining to our ancestors, are probably rolling around in their graves right now wondering, why is this occurring to America? I still say that we have been held hostage. We have basically been hijacked. And the people was in such of a mesmerizing, bewitching state that they didn't recognize it. They didn't see it. But yet now, whenever people like me can see it, and we're telling you ahead of time to prepare yourself for it, and you're still degrading people like me, demoralizing me, and demonizing people like me, well then obviously we're dealing with a society that is doomed. Absolutely doomed.
To me, like they would want me to essentially die trying before they'll admit that I was harmed.
Can you sort of sort through, and we're not trying to get you to be a psychiatrist here for the people, the men who run your state, and I guess the woman who was part of the prosecution there, but it sounds as if the state of Texas is saying you must attempt to give birth or die, and that women don't have any other choice but that. No matter what the circumstance, you give birth or die, and that they really don't want to allow any other option. Am I overreading that?
I can't begin to get into the minds of the lawmakers in my state, and I certainly wouldn't want to, but I don't think you're overreaching. You know, we have plaintiffs on the case who had non-viable pregnancies or who had babies who were not going to survive, and they still said that that's something that should have happened, and they should have to carry to term regardless of the outcome or the eventual outcome of that child's life.
Have you seen in the state of Texas any sort of genuine political backlash? One of the things that has surprised me is the lack of political backlash in states like Texas, states like Georgia, where they have these 6-week abortion bans, or states like Missouri, where they have total abortion bans. Whereas in states that are proposing them or proposing the opportunity to protect abortion rights, there is this huge outgrowth of women support, from all political parties rushing out to say, no, I want to protect myself. But the backlash piece in states that have already done it, do you see it in the state of Texas?
I think we are seeing it. I just think it's a long game. It's a hard battle to win. It's going to take a long time, and I think we know that. But I think we see it happening. I think the midterm elections last year, we saw some of those margins shrink, and we're just going to have to keep chipping away. We know this isn't something that we're going to be able to change overnight. The overturning of Roe was a 50-year war, and hopefully this one won't be quite so long, but we know that it's going to take some time.
Yeah, it is a cautionary tale that we mustn't give up our hard-won rights easily simply by electing the wrong United States senators and presidents, because it can take, as you said, decades to get them back. Your fellow plaintiffs, how are they doing? How are people's spirits in terms of this lawsuit?
It's a good question. I think we're all over the board in terms of, where we are personally. I think as far as the lawsuit specifically, we're very encouraged. I think we're optimistic. I think we're very hopeful. No matter what happens with our lawsuit, I think it's a win-win situation, because if the state of Texas does not side with us, if the Supreme Court doesn't agree with us, I think all that's going to do is create an enormous amount of outrage, which is just fuel for the fire, and it's more motivation to keep fighting. If they do side with us, obviously a win's a win, and that's great. So I think we're very optimistic, and we're seeing action similar to what's going on in Texas being taken in other states, and that's so encouraging. And
there's no doubt that for the past 50 years, young girls, women, have taken advantage of this to the degree that some of them has actually had as many as 2 and 3 abortions a year, jumping from bedroom to bedroom, not being mature enough to know the consequences in what they're doing, or they claim that they don't, and now they resort towards killing children, killing unborn babies. America, for some reason, has always had, from what I could tell, a pattern of going from one extreme to the other. And I'm going to use child discipline tactics. Back whenever I was growing up in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, especially in Northwest Tennessee, where I basically lived out my life growing up as a young lad, they went from being able to beat your kids with extension cords and cause all kind of physical and psychological scars on their loved ones, their children, to now, if you even look at one of them wrong, you're liable to have a truant officer at your front door knocking on your premises, standing in front of a judge. How come there can't be a medium, regardless whether it's discipline tactics or the right for life tactics? How come we got to go from one extreme to another? And I've said all along that abortions are wrong. But I've also said that it can be deemed as right if the woman's life is in danger or the child's life is in danger, or both. And under extreme circumstances, if you can prove that that young lady has been raped by an uncle or stepfather or whatever, and she winds up pregnant, and you know good and well that odds are the baby's going to wind up being deformed or mentally retarded, mentally challenged. Under those circumstances, I think God would permit it, even though the state may not. Because that was the whole primary purpose for abortions ever becoming legalized to begin with, was under dire, extreme circumstances of the woman's health or the child's health, or both. That was the whole sole purpose of legalizing this particular activity a long, long time ago. To me, it's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre in how extreme, and we want to point our fingers at other people that's extreme with being fanatics. They're race car fanatics, they're sports fanatics, they're sex fanatics, they're work fanatics, they're religious fanatics. We want to compartmentalize everybody of their wrongs, but we're not willing to look at our own. We're not willing to look at our own.
And that's what it's going to take. We all have to fight on all fronts.
Women of America, control of your state legislature, control of the governorship, and deciding who is in the United States Senate. It literally could be a matter of life and death and autonomy for you. Vote smart. Amanda Zarowski, you're very brave, and I'm glad that you are in this fight. Thank you. It is good to see you, and wishing you the best of luck in your lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. And coming up, President Biden, former presidents and first ladies gather in Atlanta to pay their respects to former First Lady Rosalind Carter. More next.
And I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so.
Tonight, new reporting on the plans Mike Pence abandoned, and the senator who maybe knew all about it.
This story of government abuse and political treachery is scarier than fiction. It really happened.
Then, no plea deals for Trump or...
It really did. And I told him ahead of time that it was that's the way the cow was going to eat the cabbage, pertaining to the truth, and nobody wanted to listen to me.
From now, voters will cast the first ballots in, believe it or not, the 2024 primary presidential elections. In less than a year, the whole country will vote again, not only on who will be the next president of these United States, but most likely on whether to continue the American democratic experiment, at least in its current form. This coming year will also bring at least one trial of the Republican frontrunner and former President Donald Trump.
Or not in Gaza, Israeli military operations continue in the West Bank. Tonight saw clashes in Jenin with fighting near a local refugee camp. The IDF telling us it's conducting, quote, counterterrorism activities in the area, but not providing any other details except to say it's expected to continue overnight. Orrin Lieberman joins us now. What more do we know about the hostages released and their conditions?
Anderson, this played out as it has over the course of the past several nights. Over several hours, the hostages being transferred from Hamas to the Red Cross, to the IDF, and to the hospitals. 8 of them taken to the Sheba Medical Center, 2 to the Ichilov Medical Center, both of those in or near Tel Aviv, and then the 2 Thai nationals taken to Shamir Medical Center. We do expect an update early tomorrow morning here from Sheba Medical Center, where most of those freed hostages have been taken. So far, as we've heard from the doctors and the families, they have been, generally speaking, in good physical condition. Malnutrition has been the biggest issue, but we don't have a specific update on the latest group to come out yet. It is worth passing along 2 updates with 2 specific stories we have followed to this point. 4-year-old Avigail Idan, as you just pointed out, the only American to have been released so far, is in good shape and was released from the hospital 2 days after she was released from Hamas captivity in Gaza. So that's certainly good news on that front, as now the mental health process begins in that recovery part. Meanwhile, Alma Avraham, who was taken into the hospital in critical condition, suffering from a lack of her medication and a lack of nutrition over her 50-odd days in captivity. She was unconscious for a period and on a breathing machine. Doctors at the hospital where she was taken in Beersheba say she is breathing on her own now and is conscious, so that too is good news as we wait for the next hostage transfer to take place tomorrow.
There were clashes reported between Israel and Hamas in northern Gaza today. Does that have any impact on the pause in the hostage negotiation?
So far at this point, it looks like the truce agreement is holding and should.
Unbelievable.
Holding and should for at least another 24 hours. Then we'll have to see if the effort...
Or this one, white fans were entertained by black athletes. We're going to have to set up what we call a retreat.
Arresting detail there in black and white, apparently reported.
Alternative energy, the green economics that isn't working. Well, number one, electric cars. I mean, they're not in demand. And I'm not going to get one until the motion, I can drive further that I can. Now, I'm not good with technical stuff. If I plug it in, I'll get electrocuted. You know, mechanically, I'm just no good. All right, and they're very expensive, these cars. And they have a chip shortage now. And they have a battery fire risk. And in the winter, your efficiency on electric cars drastically drops. Did you know that? I didn't know it until we started to research. So electric car, that whole thing is flat, not increasing. And in spite of that, Connecticut, another loopy far left state, goes, well, about 10 years, we're going to forbid gas-powered cars. Well, that's unconstitutional, number one. You won't be able to do that, Connecticut. And number two, it's stupid, because people are not going to be able to afford it. Even then, in 10 years, so not. The other thing is the wind, okay? So Biden, and I'll tell you about this in a minute, is going to a wind farm today to show how green he is. It's so phony. Anyway, the wind stuff is getting more and more and more expensive. Here on Long Island, where I am, you look out into the ocean, a bunch of windmills. I can see them from my house out on eastern Long Island. They surround Block Island, which is Rhode Island territory. Well, half of them don't work. And I mean, the cost to install and maintain these things is so high that state governments can't afford it. They don't have enough money to do it. So the technology
Good luck
is
to all
not
of
there
us.
to be a green world. I wish it were.
Good luck to all of us. I continue to basically leave my messages on every message that I leave, and not only saying shalom, but also saying good luck to all of us. God bless America, God bless our troops, and God bless our endeavors towards where we go from here, because this world is in peril. God bless and shalom.